recording of the video so that you'll be able to, or the webinar, so that you'll be able to watch the webinar at your leisure, should you choose. So what I'm going to do now, as we've got so much to get through, I'm going to hand over to Robert Camp, who's going to start the presentation going and facilitate the remaining hour. Thank you. Over to you, Robert.
Thanks, Dave, and good morning, everybody. I think you will all know who I am and you'll have read my blurb, but I was managing partner of Stephen Scone for nearly 9 years, and since July of this year have set up my own consultancy business. So, thank you. This is the agenda, which I'm not going to dwell on too much because we want to get to the meat of it. I'll be just doing a bit of introduction, setting the scene. I'm then going to hand over to Alex and then back to Dave. Also, I'm going to be trying to chip in with questions, but please do use the chat box and the question box if you want to raise a question, and I will try and bring those into the conversation as we move forward through the session. So just a bit of context. Firstly, I hope you're all coping with #lockdown 2. Very different this time because we have an end date, and I think I've spoken to a couple of people who are sort of ticking it off like Fletcher had in Porridge on his prison wall, and I just hope that we're not disappointed when the 2nd of December comes, although I did read today that it's likely we're going back into tiered lockdowns after that, but then in the southwest we were relatively protected from that, so let's wait and see what happens. Just a quick, easy slide. Change is not easy in normal times, but the experience of lockdown has given business the opportunity to re-envisage the way we work. And I think that first bit, change is not always easy in normal times, is particularly pertinent to the legal profession because we have reluctantly embraced change before this year. Of course, we've now had to embrace change without choice. And that brings me to my first real slide, which is the traditional change curve graph, which shows all of the various emotions of everybody when you're trying to implement change in an organization: frustration, anger, joy, excitement, etc. Of course, the traditional change curve, the horizontal axis could be months or even years. Then we had this momentous announcement, 8 o'clock on the evening of Monday, the 23rd of March, when effectively we were all told to stay at home. The impact of that is you then get what I call the COVID change curve, where the horizontal axis is completely shortened to days, in that we all had to suddenly re-envisage our businesses in a matter of days to get people working from home. The reason I put this up is don't underestimate the fact that there will still be people going through all of the emotions on the classic change curve. Even though you got them working remotely, you will still have people in your organizations who are angry, frustrated, concerned, as well as those who are excited. Anyway, that's enough about me. I'm going to hand over to Alex in a minute, and he's going to talk about how we can make this exciting future work, the implications that lockdown and COVID have on TOSers, and then Dave's going to lead us in some more of the techie stuff, but not too techie. I did brief Dave beforehand as being a managing partner, having had many IT organizations try and sell into me. I said the #1 rule of selling to lawyers is don't be too techie. So Alex is a creative strategic thinker, commercial director of TOSers, and tasked with developing and implementing the firm's marketing and communication plans, working alongside the firm's leadership to deliver the growth strategy and to build on TOSers' 200-year-plus history. Prior to joining TOSers in 2019, Alex worked in finance, travel, and the public sector. He's an experienced relationship manager, team leader, change deliverer, operational and performance management, and coaching and development. So, Alex, over to you. You're on mute. The classic Zoom thing. Still on mute, Alex. There we go.
Yeah, I've got it. There we go. Cheers. So thanks, Robert. It's an interesting. Now I've lost my slides that have come out.
Yeah, don't worry, I will get them back for you.
Cheers. Yeah, I was just saying, couldn't have written that introduction myself better, Robert. So I appreciate that. Can you just put them into full view for me, Dave?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Are they there now?
Not at my end.
Okay.
So whilst Dave's bringing that up, I'll just, for those of you who aren't aware of Tozers in much detail, Tozers is a Southwest law firm, full service, operating across 3 offices, Exeter and 2 down in South Devon. So ultimately today, I'm hoping to,
You should now have the slides back, Alex.
I have, but I've not got control. Hang on. Here we go. Sorry about that. I lost control as I unmuted. So yeah, I guess what I'm looking to cover today really is a very brief summary of COVID-19, the lockdown, its obvious impacts on us as a firm, specifically in relation to our colleagues moving to a home working environment, but also thinking about how we've built resilience within the organisation, had to adapt to the current circumstances, and also how we can take that learning from the past 8-9 months and use that for benefit as we move forwards. So as we faced into lockdown, as you will have all experienced, I guess, the emergence really led us to think about a significant amount in our operation and a huge amount changed. And I guess as things developed and we became aware of how significant COVID was going to be, so kind of early February into mid-February, I suppose, we started planning and thinking about what key impacts were likely to hit our business. And I guess those impacts were in 3 obvious places. So the first one was the impact on our colleagues and clients. And we had to think very specifically about our challenges with kit. So how did we get colleagues home? How did we get people into a safe working environment as quickly as possible? And that wasn't entirely smooth. So we had colleagues walking down the high street with desktops and monitors who didn't have laptops or bring your own devices. And so whilst we benefited from colleagues having access to their phone lines through VoIP, it meant they had to take desktop computers home with them to be able to enable that. So fortunately, our clients were able to access us almost immediately, but it wasn't at the one of some challenges for the colleagues and I guess the other part I'll touch on that is there were colleagues at home with their computers on their kitchen tables, and these are big chunky bits of desktop kit and keyboards and chunky telephones. So it's not an easy thing to just put away at the end of the evening and forget about, but we got them home and we were able to service our clients. I think the second thing we had to think about was the impact on our finances. And that, I guess, specifically was focused around what would happen with cash flow, how we could negotiate potential overheads, but also what projects were in flight or planned to be implemented that we had to think about that capital expenditure. And to do that, we modeled 3 cash flow situations, a expected case, a worst case, and a best case scenario. And we monitored those cash flows on a weekly basis, pretty much from March through to June, when things became clearer. Actually, we were coming out towards the better end of our expectations. And then the third impact was around actually how our clients would access our legal services. So both our existing clients who had matters in flight, but also how would new clients access us? How would they find us? How would they find a way to be able to work with us and to instruct us on new business? So there we go. So how did we adapt our strategy? I've gone. Excuse me. So we thought about the marketplace. We recognized that things were changing. We knew that our clients needed to access our services. And we had to think about how we did that. And from a client perspective, how would they be able to communicate it? So we did a number of things. Firstly, we created a coronavirus support hub on our website. That involved the creation of 18 pages of new website content in under a week, we wrote more insights in the months of April and May than we'd ever created as an organization. One of those insights actually rated above gov.uk's advice on the particular subject, and that drove a significant amount of traffic. I think in the 2 months, May and June, it was accounted for about 30% of our overall website traffic. So by complete fluke, but a real benefit to us. We also introduced live chat to the website. It had been something that had been in plan for 6 months and was being discussed with compliance and team leaders. And actually, we made the decision to implement it in under a week once we realized that all of our clients were going to a digital platform to try and reach out, and it was our best way of interacting with them. We also introduced a video software for the first time. So we purchased video software during lockdown, and we used that software to communicate with our clients in a new way. Short videos. There'd always been some hesitation and resistance to doing video. The lawyers at Tozers were not overly keen on recording themselves to camera, but lockdown provided a great time to do it, because when is the best time to have a slightly homemade, rough and ready looking video than when you're actually at home? So we implemented that, and that's proven very successful. And then finally, and probably most importantly, we implemented a significant calling program to reach out to our existing clients, just to check in with them. How are things? How's this impacting you? How are you feeling? How can we help you? And that demonstrated both a real care and understanding, but it also enabled us to cement some relationships, to get a depth of knowledge around our client, their home environment that we potentially wouldn't have had in normal circumstances. As well as that, we generated a significant amount of e-marketing. So we were able to share the stories, some of the sentiment we were hearing in our specific sectors or client bases, and we were able to put that insight back out to our clients. And then finally, we packaged our advice. So we actually put together some fixed fee structures that made it easier for our clients to buy our services. We also had to think about, having recognized our marketplace, actually what was changing overnight in terms of the way we needed to operate. And I think there were a couple of key things. Firstly, how we connected our teams, both together, but also in meetings with clients. And so adoption of Zoom, Teams, Remo, things like that came very quickly. We also had to shift our file process to Paperlite at pace. So it was already a journey in progress, but as Robert touched on the change curve, it was something that some teams were particularly resistant to. But the fact that they were at home and didn't have access to those files almost removed that resistance overnight, and we were able to accelerate and adopt that Paperlite filing, including investment in electronic bundling, which was something that we purchased again during lockdown. Our teams had to get used to remote hearings and meetings, and so meeting rooms were set up with the appropriate kit for full web conference facilities, which was something we hadn't had before. And then finally, we had to think about how we used the resources available to us as efficiently as possible. So there was a degree of centralization in our administration in terms of staff. Actually, we saw an increase in productivity because of that centralization. And finally, we were able to generate some more client-focused people elements as a result of the efficiencies we've made. So actually, we've created a new client services team as a result of the way we adapted our support model during lockdown. Sorry, that skipped a page. So in closing, I guess where we are at the moment, we have, as I've said, taken some of those learnings. We've implemented lots of new things, but I guess there's 3 things that we really need to ensure don't stall unnecessarily in relation to our broader strategy. So the first one is our ongoing investment in our colleagues. So listening and understanding how things are going for them, how the working arrangements are, what their well-being is like, as well as monitoring their productivity. And we're doing that through the introduction of weekly colleague surveys, and we're continuing to improve our internal communication. The second is our investment in our clients. And I mentioned the formation of the new client services team that we've launched, but we've also invested in client journey mapping, in-depth client interviews that are going to give us a real voice of how the client's feeling about the way we're delivering for them at the moment. And again, I think we will be looking in the future to the onboarding journey, the interaction through a client relationship. More and more clients have had to get used to using digital, whether that's ordering their shopping, whether that is, I had a great example of, I was doing a webinar with, in the holiday park sector the other day, and a parks business talking about how, because of the restrictions, they've had to introduce booking for tables, booking for the swimming pool, click and collect from the bar. People are getting used to using this digital technology in everyday life where they may not have used it. And I think we have to recognize that that will be an expectation in legal services, the same as they're using it elsewhere in their lives. And so I expect us to see, looking at things like legal, perfect portal, Setify, to try and generate a smoother client journey and experience. And then I guess finally, we will be looking to growth both in our existing markets through increasing our market share. We believe we're seeing that in a couple of sectors already, where we were able to continue to deliver through lockdown, where other competitors potentially fell slightly short, and we've picked up new work as a result, and we need to hold on to that. But also the nature of the changes we've seen, people working from home, people interacting remotely via Zoom or Microsoft Teams, means that where we may have placed geographic limitations on ourselves in the way that we thought we could go out and win work, that's less of a barrier now. So actually looking at our business, looking at the sectors we deliver in, we're able to remove some of the shackles of geography from that thought process, and we're able to access the newer markets. So that will be a significant focus for us going forwards. And I guess overarching all of those strategic elements is the need for efficiency, the need for security, and evolution in the working practices and infrastructure that we've got. Thanks.
Thanks, Alex. Some really insightful observations and comments. I'm sure a lot of you on the call will resonate with some of the positives and also the hard bits of actually lugging kit down the high street. I'm sure you weren't alone in doing that, Alex, your firm. I'm going to hand over to Dave in a minute, but what I found really interesting, and this is a reflection of my time as managing partner, in that IT, we know IT is there, it is everywhere in our daily lives. And it's a very easy trap, I consider, for law firms in particular, where we're not particularly IT proficient, to fall into, is letting IT drive the strategy. What I really liked about what you were saying, Alex, about coming out of this is actually your firm's strategy is very focused around the customer or the client, very client-centric, but actually making sure that what you offer as an IT service, as part of your legal service, is what clients expect in today's market for everything that they're doing outside of law. And I think it's really important that as we have to grapple with this new world that we're living in, with Zoom and, as you say, apps and live chat, et cetera, which actually most organizations have been doing for years, legal profession has just taken a long time to catch up with. You use IT to drive your strategy, not the other way around. So Dave, hand over to you now.
Thank you very much. Hopefully I'm not on mute so you can hear me. Yeah, thank you to both of you. Alex, some fascinating stuff in what you've had to say. And actually some of that replicates through my upcoming slides. The amount of technology sitting out there is vast. There's too much for anybody to get their heads around. So the key for every single business is what technology does that business need to meet its needs. And every business is different. So my aim over the coming slides is to give you a framework and an understanding of the areas that you need to consider with regards to technology and the approach that you use. But one thing I would stress is that it's really important that this isn't just about technology, and Robert touched on this. This is about your end customer, your end client as well, because things have changed in their world now, and they expect more from us. So it's no longer just about serving the internal needs of a business. We now have to serve the external needs of the client. And you know, one thing I'm absolutely certain of, consumers now want more flexibility than pre-COVID, because they've seen what's available, as Alex has highlighted. So back to something that Alex and Robert have mentioned, let's just take a look at March 2020. People were walking around with desktops, not necessarily in a shopping trolley, but they were taking these huge desktops home. There was then sitting at the kitchen table, confusion, systems wouldn't work, data is all over the place. Then you've got issues with communication. And unfortunately, what was happening is that an impression was being given of, actually, just for the time being, we're closed until we can sort ourselves out. Now, that's not something that anybody wanted to give, but it was the outward impression from many businesses, and I'm not just talking about solicitors now. I'm talking about the business community in general. So, just as an example here, so Alex and Robert have mentioned about staff walking home with their desktop computers and laptops. Now this isn't Bluegrass trying to be smart, but a couple of years ago we took the decision that actually we wanted to make everybody in the business mobile, and we wanted to de-risk our office. And what that meant is that we wanted to take all systems out of our office and move them into the cloud, which I'll come on to later. So when the lockdown happened, everybody just picked up their laptop, a headset, and then went home. They plugged in and they were working just as they were from the office. They didn't have to take a phone home because they're able to use their computers and the headset. So there was no impact at all with the announcement that the Prime Minister gave. We were simply able to work. So that's what it was like in 2020. Sorry, in March 2020. And what it showed is that actually technology failed us at the time when we most needed it, because the vast majority of business, probably 99% of businesses, didn't actually think, believe or consider a pandemic. But when we needed technology to work for us, it didn't. And one of my colleagues was on a personal level dealing with a firm of solicitors. And when the event happened, he wasn't able to, or the solicitors weren't able to transact what he required for a week, because the systems didn't work outside of the office. So those remote workers couldn't actually get access to the data they needed to be able to help this person transact the piece of business that he was doing with our firm of solicitors. But then what's happened is that because technology failed in large areas, quick fixes were put in place. So, you know, we hit that quick fix button and things were able to work. But as with all of these things, quick fixes really are temporary. So rolling things forward, we get to September 2020. We've gone from now everybody having to work from home. Business life is adjusting in that we're working in a remote environment. And in September, the government start to encourage us to return to work. So they've gone away from the strategy of, if you can work from home, to please go back to the office. And then a few weeks later, the government announced, actually, we're going to put the brakes on. Please go back to remote working again. And at that time, they said it's likely to be for 6 months. And then we all know what happened a week ago when we're in lockdown 2.0. So
Dave, can I come in here?
Yeah,
because picking up and just ask quick observation from you and Alex on this, perhaps Alex first. Alex, you talked us through the issues of March. Was it much easier this time going back into lockdown 2?
I think that would depend who in the firm you asked. So I would suggest the majority, yes. So we had operated a voluntary attendance basis pretty much throughout. So colleagues who needed to be in from either a well-being or productivity perspective were allowed in, but we were encouraging all other staff to stay at home. I think the big difference between 2.0 and first time round is that our residential property team specifically are flat out busy, because I think when lockdown 1 happened, the market, the residential market didn't quite know what was going to happen, and it stalled a little. It went quiet. It enabled those colleagues ultimately to be able to operate with the volumes of work they had inefficiently. They can't afford to work inefficiently at the moment. We're opening 200% more files than we've ever opened in a month. And so whilst the encouragement is to work at home, the balance of risk, of safety to productivity is far greater this time round than last time round, I think. So that's probably my largest observation about the difference. But for the majority of the firm, actually, kind of we were already in the flow. And for most, and for me personally, it doesn't really feel like I'm in lockdown. I've continued to work from home. My kids continue to go to school. My wife's a teacher, so she's still going to work. So lockdown 2.0, other than at weekends, hasn't really hit me yet, I suppose. But and that would be the same for many people in our firm. But residential property is definitely a difference.
Okay, an interesting observation. Dave, from your customers, Bluegrass's customers and the tech side, was lockdown 2 a bit less painful?
It was definitely less painful because lots of businesses had adapted to remote working. But the issues that they have had over the past 7-8 months still exist in terms of where their data is stored, data security, some staff using home computers. So those things haven't gone away, but it was just the U-turn. It was just go back home and work again. I would say the vast majority of our clients, as Alex has said, haven't seen a difference, except they're still using all of those temporary solutions, which are far from ideal. So I think what's happened now is that we've gone from a temporary working period to home working or remote working now being a permanent feature for businesses, and an expectation as well, not necessarily on a full-time basis, but maybe several days in a week a person works from home. So just coming back to technology again, the harsh reality is that businesses who didn't remove the technology constraints that they've had over the past 7-8 months, they're still there and they're going to feel pain. So the more we continue to move in and out of these lockdowns or restrictions, that pain is going to get worse. Unless, of course, it steps forward and adapts. And recognizing that a form of remote working it is here for good. So are we going to run a poll now, Robert? Yes. So we've got a couple of polls we would like your opinions on, please. If you could take a look at the question and give us your views on which of the items you consider to be the biggest priority.
I know we've got lawyers on the call. Let's not overanalyze the answers, because we do want to finish at 9 o'clock. Are we there? Can we share the results, Sarah, now? So there we go. So very interesting, resonating with a lot of Alex said, 67% improving client experience, and then staff second. Interesting that cybersecurity is not a high one. Dave, I know Dave will come back to that. It's one of his pet top subjects. And also, I'm sure if we'd have asked this poll, as Alex said, May, June, cash flow would have been a lot higher up the results. But yeah. Interesting. Thank you. Okay.
Yeah, I will come back to the cyber one. I think that's the one that frightens me most on that list. and to see it as 0 is really scary. So just moving forward then. So what could the future look like? So I think what we're going to see is that we are seeing flexible working and longer days, and that's come about for 2 reasons. One is our employees are now want more flexibility in their days, and actually for a business that's good. So we can allow them a little bit more time to go and collect their children or pick their children up, and they can work in the evening. And the reason that's a benefit is that consumers now want to be able to do things in the evening. Systems and data are going to be anywhere, and they don't just have to be in the office. They can be in many, many locations, which again I'll come on to. I think we're going to see online appointments and chat. Now, when we introduced online appointments, I had real fear over this, because I thought that actually what was going to happen is that there was going to be absolute chaos in our individual calendars. But in fact, we actually manage our calendars better. And what happens is that end client, end user, end consumer is able to actually book an appointment with us at a time that suits them and a time that suits us. And we're not talking about they have access to our diaries 24/7. They can book a meeting whenever they like. They're within the slots that we have. So online appointments are something which I think are going to come quite fast. And Alex has mentioned chat. Again, we've got chat on our website, which we've only put on since the pandemic. And it's a great tool because it allows for that quick conversation. There's going to be, I think the office is going to change. Many businesses now are looking at downsizing into smaller offices, not necessarily an employee size. So if staff are no longer going to be 100% in the office, again, the technology sitting around that has to be flexible enough to enable that dual working. We're likely to see more lockdowns and restrictions. And in general, I feel that businesses are going to have to be far more agile than they ever were. And again, the past 7-8 months has shown that. We're going to have more things thrown at us. And technology is going to help with that agility. So, Alex, you mentioned chat. Have you thought about online appointments at all?
Yeah, so I've been really impressed by a piece of software called Calendly, which enables exactly what you've described. I think as an organisation, we probably aren't in a place yet. The discussions have been had, but I see the benefits in it. Personally, I could definitely see the benefit in it. I think operating that across a variation of different ways of working will be the challenge, and I think that has to come through, again, like Robert said earlier, use the potential technology to facilitate a discussion and develop a strategy. So it's something that can be brought to the table and discussed. But no, we're not at a stage where we'd be in a place to implement that anytime soon.
Okay. The one thing I would say to yourself and to all those on the call, if you're using Microsoft 365, then 365 has recently been enhanced to allow the online calendar without any extra fees. So it's a function embedded within 365 that allows you to have calendars per person, which you can make available online. So something to consider. So let's take a look, moving on from what the future could look like, into how do you, the areas that I consider important for future-proofing. And there are 5. One is the cloud, a strategy, operational support, finance, and audit. So I'm just going to pick up on those 5 now and run through them. The one thing I would say is that future-proofing is a step-by-step process. It's not something you have to do all at once, and it's not something you should do all at once. You take it in bite-sized chunks and you move gradually up to the point where your business is totally future-proofed. So that's key here, and because it can be frightening to think, I've got to change my business. Now, with regards to technology, let's just do this one step at a time. and then you get greater benefits from doing it that way. So the cloud. What is the cloud? Everybody mentions the cloud. So examples of the cloud for those on the webinar will be things like online banking, which many people use, Google Mail. I've mentioned Office 365 email. Apple's iCloud is in the cloud where you store your photos. If you use Dropbox, I hope you don't use Dropbox in your businesses just for security reasons, but Dropbox, again, is a cloud-based service. Basically, it's other businesses providing you with the technology that you can use via the internet. It's as simple as that. Now, a huge benefit of the cloud is that it avoids an expensive capital outlay on equipment. So we've gone now from big servers sitting in offices to a subscription model. So you get immense flexibility. You can implement what you need when you need it. And it's a toolbox. I mentioned at the start, the amount of technology is vast. And if you consider the cloud as being a toolbox with various spanners and screwdrivers and whatever in it that you need to be able to do a job, that's what the cloud provides you. It's low cost, often, well, they are monthly costs, and it's safe and secure. For example, Microsoft, who are the biggest provider of services, they have a red team and a blue team. And the reds are there to attack and the blues are there to defend. I'm sure I've got that the right way around. But basically, that's all they do, is that they have a team of people who are trying to break into their systems and a team of people who are there just to defend the systems. So they are very, very safe and secure. I can't guarantee they're 100% safe, but then what system is? Not even a system sitting in somebody's office. So the cloud.
Dave, can I chip in? Because I think you've explained it very well there. And as I said earlier, I'm certainly not au fait with a lot of technology, but a lot of law firms, as I've already said, were reluctant to change. And also a lot of law firms, for some, we're very risk averse as a profession. We like to see a box and we like to have wires coming out of that box, and we like that box with those wires to be in our premises. How do you've said a bit about the cloud, but how do you reassure, managing partners or partners in law firms that actually this nebulous thing floating in the cloud is as good and secure and safe as that box with wires that you can lock the door to every evening?
I'll come at this question in a slightly different way, in that just because you can see your box and it has wires and flashing lights and it's locked behind a door, it doesn't mean it's safe. Because SMEs, businesses in general, are there to be attacked by cyber criminals, and it's happening every single day. And it's not just the big guys that are getting hit, it's the small ones as well. Many, many small businesses are attacked on a daily basis, even in our city. So having your box sitting in a room with flashing lights, you are more at risk than using the likes of Microsoft and Amazon, who have thrown millions and billions of pounds at security. So I think it comes down to that, to be honest, Robert. It's, have you invested enough money? And the chances are you haven't, and you can't. Whereas the likes of Microsoft and Amazon, they can do something that we can't do, that managing partners can't do. Hopefully that answers the question. So this cloud thing is really, really important for business. And Alex has mentioned the fact that they're using the cloud as well. So let's take a look at some of the things in the cloud. Office 365 has all the applications you need. It comes with SharePoint, so that it's a central repository for data and files. Basically, it's a library. Then you've got OneDrive, which can be used for storing personal files within a company's organization. And you've got Teams for communication. So you can use Teams for chat. You can use it for video, similar to this now, but you can also use it for calling as well. And they're enhancing Teams more and more. So it removes the need for a physical telephone. lots of practice management systems are now going in the cloud. Phone systems are now cloud-based as well. So it's referred to as VoIP, but basically it's just a phone system. Often you have a simple headset and you have an application on your computer, and it uses the microphone through your computer and the audio. Cloud provides you with business continuity because in almost 100% of the cases, those businesses have backup systems. So if something fails, they have a failover. That doesn't happen in most businesses. And finally, cybersecurity training can be put online as well. So, for example, how that might work, and I don't know whether you have this at TOSAs, Alex, but we have an awareness training program that runs on a monthly basis. Emails are sent out to members of staff in a business, and those emails are phishing emails. What we want is we want people to click on them. We want people to enter their credentials that they shouldn't. So then when they do that, that then leads them onto a training course, just a very simple video. Do you have anything like that at all, Alex?
Yeah, so we are, we're tested. So when we click on particular links, we're asked, there's a kind of a stage between clicking on it and it actually going, that it asks us to assess the risk. And so we're able to identify any factors in that link that, or in that email, that potentially look suspect. And then it tells us whether we've got it right or wrong. And if we've got it wrong, I think either way, it probably tells IT, but we only find out when we've got it wrong. But, yeah.
That's when you get slapped wrist.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's plenty of things out there that can help. And actually, I know nobody ticked the cyber box in the survey, but seriously, at the moment, can anybody guarantee they know where their company data is? And that's the hardest part, because you can't unless you have the right systems in place. And it could be that people are downloading data to their desktops, to their laptops, and not storing it back where you need it, which makes you very, very vulnerable to data loss, data theft, and then the ultimate, the fine, which nobody wants, because with that goes reputational damage. So the cloud is absolutely key to future-proofing a business. So next is a strategy. Now, importantly, the guys picked up on this, the strategy is not based on technology, it's what the business wants. But the question businesses need to ask themselves is, are you willing to make a change to how you work, or do you just want to take a chance and hope that everything's going to be right and your technology is going to do what you need it to do? I would argue that change is better than chance, as has been proved over recent months. Having a clear strategy based on your business requirements will enable change and will enable the right technology to go in place. So one of the things that we do for our clients is that all of our clients have the option of an IT strategy. Well, we understand what their business is doing, how it's working. We look at the current infrastructure in some detail. We map that against the availability of technology that could suit them, and a strategy is developed that looks up to 3 to 5 years. Now, that's very difficult, 3 to 5 years, but it's important that there's a path, and then there's a gradual implementation on that strategy. A strategy is an enabler. It helps a business achieve its goals. The one thing I would say, though, to any business, any firm out there, is don't let your IT strategy drive your business. Your business strategy drives your business, and your IT strategy is an element of that, and the two have to work together. So with a strategy, an IT strategy, you're no longer working in the dark. You have a clear roadmap of where you want your business to go and how that technology is going to enable you to get there. And most importantly, it gives you predictable costs rather than knee-jerk reaction.
Can I have a second poll now, Dave, I think?
We can.
Yeah.
So please, can you comment on what you would consider your areas of concern to be.
And I think this is answering this with reflecting on what your new strategy is going to be going forward.
Yes. Should we call it quits there?
Yeah. So home workers, security, productivity, collaboration, along with outdated technology are the two highest.
Yeah.
Interesting.
That is very interesting, actually, because home workers have security in the productivity and collaboration. It's really difficult when you're dispersed to have the productivity, collaboration, and ensure you have the security. And yeah, technology can hamper all of that. That's actually very interesting, that one. Thank you very much.
Okay, Dave, I'm just going to nudge you on time. So.
Yeah, great. Thank you very much. So next up is operational support, and this has come more to the front since there's been a need to have working from home and also the longer hours. So if people are stretching their hours, if businesses are working longer hours now and maybe weekends, do you have the appropriate support in place to be able to resolve the problem? So for example, I don't know, let's just say you have a call arranged with a client to discuss some legal matter. It's planned for 8 o'clock and you can't get remote access to the systems you need onto the data. What do? Do you cancel the call and frustrate the client, or do you contact somebody who can fix it? Now, I think because of the way remote working has changed, there's a real need to have appropriate operational support in there, both for the business and the client. So it has to be available when you need it. I think it has to be 24/7. So several years ago, we introduced 24/7 for all clients across the board, regardless, because we don't just work 9 to 5, 8:30 to 5:30. Those things change. So even on Christmas Day, we're open for calls. So I'm not suggesting it would be nice to get a call from you on Christmas Day, but maybe not. But Christmas Day, if there's an issue, we can fix it. And I think that's where it's important that where you have operational support in place, it meets your needs. Even if you have an internal IT team, using a third party can give you complementary support. Now, with all of this, you've got the cloud, you've got your strategy, which identifies all the systems you're going to use. So you're going to have a large financial capital outlay and a large increase in operational costs. Now, probably at this point, for those people who are listening or watching, that's an instant turn off. Okay, webinar's over. Haven't got the money either to spend on the big capital items or to increase our operational costs hugely. In fact, that's far from the case. The cloud and the right strategy in place, you can avoid large cash outlays. Technology doesn't have to cost you a fortune. Don't let any IT company tell you otherwise. Seriously, it doesn't need to cost you a fortune. Our support, for example, starts at £19 a month, and it doesn't go up much from that, and all of a sudden you're on 24/7 support. Hosted solutions are monthly. So from a financial perspective, the cloud and the elements of your strategy, yes, there is going to be some capital outlay, but it's not going to be huge. The days of having to spend £100,000, £50,000 on equipment are, to a large extent, long gone. So technology is now more affordable, and we can offer leasing. So there are leasing facilities available, again, to allow you to upgrade, say, your desktops to laptops, so you've got greater flexibility with staff, without that capital outlay, large capital outlay, but then you have regular monthly payments, so you know what you're having to pay, which means that you can plan. Alex, do you have monthly arrangements in place?
No, we don't. So that was one of the key projects that we deferred as part of falling into lockdown. We had secured leased funding via a high street bank connection, and we were about to initiate a full thin client solution, which would have involved monthly licensing on both server equipment, but also individuals' hardware. It would have enabled us to almost like set up a bring your own device position where colleagues could have logged on using any piece of equipment using two-factor authentication. And it is something that we plan to implement in the very near future, but it was just put on ice during lockdown. So something we see the value in, that the board have signed up to, but we just deferred the implementation of whilst there was a degree of uncertainty.
Okay, yeah, and again, that's understandable. I think the point is that hosting, cloud, whatever, can actually help you manage your finances. So as you scale up, you're only going one monthly fee up, and again, you can scale down as well, which gives you that greater flexibility in your business with finance. Not long.
I think the other thing I'd add, the thing I'd add there quickly as well, Dave, though, is that as well as that, it's a set commitment that you can factor into your cash flows. It also means that I think I've experienced both here at Tozers, but working with other law firms in my previous role, that actually kit starts to be stretched out in its life because of the issue of further capital outlay, and kind of doing a full 100 new laptops for staff in one hit kind of is daunting. So it just doesn't get done. And then the kit gets old, it becomes less secure, becomes less efficient for colleagues. And I think the leasing arrangement, what really sold it to us was the fact that there's a buyback process, that we've got a set time frame where we know we're going to be bringing new kit in, and the monthlies just carry on the same. And I think that removes all that decision-making process, and therefore all the risk and all the inefficiency, just by rolling what you've already got, really.
Yeah, it really does. And it keeps you safe as well. So 2 final slides, Robert, and then we're ready. So this last thing is an IT audit. Now you look at the screen, you go, I don't understand that, it's complex. Actually, it's really simple. This is what we call a rapid assessment audit. And basically we look at 9 areas of a business. No difficult technology questions. You don't have to be a technical expert. But what we can do is that with this rapid assessment, we can highlight using the RAG status, is identify for you very quickly areas that you need to consider changing, or where things are good. So this is available for everybody on the call, everybody on the webinar. It's free, it takes about 20 minutes, and then we provide you with a report at the end. The full assessment is this, which basically it takes the previous one, which looked like a Rubik's Cube and now has 4, and we assess where you are now, and where you could be in the future, if you have the right technology in place, along with a plan that goes with that. This second part is a paid for item. It's not particularly expensive, but it's something that is available to all of our clients, as well as to those on the webinar and prospective clients. And summary, right technology solutions will give you control and flexibility. They really don't have to cost you a fortune. But please, I would stress that an IT strategy is your roadmap. It dovetails with your business strategy. It will more than likely, 99% chance, include elements in the cloud to give you the flexibility you need. And I would love to talk to everybody on the call, everybody on the webinar who listens to this, and I'll do it without jargon. I'm not good with technology jargon, as most of the people in my business will let you know. That's me done, Robert.
Thank you, Dave. Thank you, Alex. We've got a few minutes for any questions if anybody wants to put them in the Q&A. Just a couple of observations from myself. We as a profession have got to accept that IT is changing faster than perhaps we would like. And actually, we need to create a strategy that allows us to embrace as much of that change as works for us in our strategy. I think there's a couple of traps that we tend to fall in as lawyers, and there's the profession. We tend to be magpies and we see lots of nice, shiny new IT things, and we think that will work for our business with actually thinking about how it's going to impact on our client base and our customer base. The other thing I would say is there are some really interesting stuff, or is some really interesting stuff coming on the horizon. A lot of it from outside of the IT sector, legal sector. But I was speaking to somebody the other day who, talking about kit and financing, etc., is saying that there is now software out there that means that that is all you have to provide your people, plus a couple of screens and a keyboard. And you can then mirror everything from your phone to your screen. So you don't need a desktop, you don't need a laptop, because actually your iPhone 11 or whatever it is as powerful as most laptops. It's just that it's more convenient a laptop, but they're now producing this stuff that allows you to just mirror everything straight onto one or two screens. Think of how that then allows you to be much more flexible in how you approach stuff. So lots of stuff out there. And that's why, going back to Alex's point, having this flexibility and Dave's point about leasing, pay as you go, pay as you use, allows you to start embracing the new stuff rather than waiting until you've sweated the assets. We've got a question, so I'm going to ask Dave. Could Dave give some ideas of the likely cost of a full IT audit for a small company?
Define a small company. Around £750.
Okay, that was Ian Hunt from East Devon Law. So Dave, you can follow that up anyway with Ian. But I think it's a very good tool, the audit. Certainly, I wish I'd been able to use it at Stephen Scone, because I just love the way it's very, very simple. It's got the cost bar on the bottom, so it shows what Bluegrass think you're spending. And then it shows what you would be spending if you started moving some of the ambers and the reds to green. So a very, very simple tool. And I think it would be worthwhile, but speak to Dave about that. Any other questions?
Robert, can I just make a quick observation on that whilst potentially other questions come in? For me, what particularly interests me in that audit piece is putting the knowledge and the information back into the hands of the leadership. I think what I've observed both at but previously as well is that discussions around IT and tech are typically one directional, and they're from the IT director, IT manager at the board. And I'm afraid board members typically like to be seen as knowledgeable, don't like to show frailty, and so nod and go along even if the full understanding isn't there. And so the IT team have this power of, this is what we think's right, this is what we want. And I genuinely believe the type of consultation that David's talking about gives some degree of power back to that board group and gives them the information they need to start challenging. I think about how much scrutiny and challenge I get in my role, and I wish I got the same degree that the IT manager got, but the difference is that they understand what I do, they don't understand what he does. So I think I genuinely would look at that piece and think about not only what will it help you identify, but how will it help you balance the level of conversation you're having with your internal team.
Yeah,
absolutely.
You're right, Alex. It really does help that conversation, because we try to avoid the jargon bit. There are little bits of jargon, but they're explained so that you can then have the informed conversation with your internal IT team or IT provider. That's really important.
Okay, I know we're coming up to 9 o'clock. It is 9 o'clock. We've just got one final poll, if you wouldn't mind participating in before you leave. So if you would like future webinars, and this is purely at your discretion, but what sort of things might you like to hear more about if Bluegrass were to run them? Okay,
thank
Sarah.
you. Yeah, tech as a service is something which has been around for a little while, but it's really come to the fore this year, and we could happily run something on that. That's good. Thank you very much. I would. Oops. One moment, very quickly. So I'd like to say thank you. Thank you to all those who've attended the webinar. Also want to thank Robert and Alex for their insight as well. Having two guys on, the quality of both of them is fabulous. And you know, just getting their insight is tremendous. If you do need to, anybody wants to get in contact with Bluegrass, then there's our telephone number, email address. If you wanted to contact me direct, just put David before the @ but yeah, thank you very much for attending, and have a good day, and please future-proof your business.